Good morning. We're live this morning, Tuesday morning. This morning, we're talking alternative pathways to college. I know we do a lot of college speak, especially in the spring at your teen media, but today we're going to talk about alternative paths for students who are either not ready for college or have decided that that's not for them. So my guest today, Craig, is going to talk to us about all things alternative. But before we do that, I want to remind everybody that we are live on Tuesday, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. That means that you can ask Craig questions. You just put them in the comments section and he will answer your questions or make comments. I'll bring them up. But if you are watching a replay at any other time, Craig will not be able to answer your question, but you should go ahead and put it in the comment section because you can dialogue with other people who are watching the replay. Just know that Craig won't be there to answer your question. Good morning, Craig. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. I want to say a couple of things. I want to let people know, okay, because I have stats today. Did you know that in 2012, 66.2% of high school graduates immediately enrolled in colleges? That's only 66%. That means that there is a chunk of students who didn't enroll in colleges. So we want to know, what are they doing? What are the options for those students who chose not to do that? So we're going to speak with Craig about that. But before we speak with Craig, we have a bonus today. We are giving away free copies of a book. So the first 10 people who email me at kharding@yourteenmag.com, and that's going to be in the comment section. You email me at that address, at that email address. Give me your email, your mailing address. It's going to be a hard copy book, and the book is Blue Collar Cash: Love Your Work, Secure Your Future, and Find Happiness for Life. So the first 10 emails I get, those people will receive free copies of the book. Okay, we're all set now. Hi, Craig. Thanks for joining us again.
Again, thank you for having me. This is such an important topic. It's wonderful you've given away that book because everything that people can do to educate themselves about alternatives and options that exist, that's a value added to everyone.
Thank you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your work.
Sure. So I'm actually a college admissions consultant. So I focus most of the time on helping students and families around the world transition from high school to college and university, primarily in the United States, but even around the world. But I also, having done this now for over 16 years, I'm very fascinated by and very passionate about helping families and students understand that college is not the end all be all, and that there is a whole world of opportunity that exists beyond college. And so I liken myself often to a director of what comes next, as opposed to a director of college counseling when I was working in high schools, because I want students to understand that it's not college or something else. There's a whole spectrum of opportunities that exist, and they shouldn't feel pigeonholed into a 2-year or 4-year college if that's just not their style, or they have goals that don't align necessarily with having to go to get a 2 or 4-year degree.
I love that. What comes next? Christine and Lucy. My email is in the comment section. We're going to put it up again, but if you scroll up, you'll see the email. I saw that it was placed there a couple times. It's kharding at yourteenmag, yourteenmag.com. I'm not going to say it again, but if you scroll up, I'll mention that it's in the comment section. So go ahead up there and access the email. You mentioned a spectrum of options. What are the diversity of options available?
Oh my goodness. I mean, we could probably spend hours talking about all the opportunities. And again, it's a shame, I think, that many high schools, both public and private, domestic and international, often oversimplify the options that exist. They often say, well, you can go to 4-year college, you can go to 2-year college, or you can do something else. But that something else category, as you mentioned, at least in the United States, is roughly a third of high school graduates, if not more, since the pandemic. And these things include everything from taking a gap year to getting a job, to going into public service in the form of military, apprenticeships, starting a business, either online or just getting any sort of job that does not require a 4-year degree. So experiential learning is often much in demand for lots of students who have experienced 12 years of sitting in a classroom and they're ready for something else. But again, oftentimes their college counselors or their school counselors or their peer group sort of forces them into peer pressure, them into think that they have to continue on with school. And again, for some, it's a great opportunity to go to a 4-year, 2-year school. But for many others, learning a trade, traveling, doing a gap year, monetizing a hobby, getting an apprenticeship. These are all options. Starting a business, you know, volunteering if you have the ability to do so without making money. These are all great ways to learn about yourself, your goals, and prioritize what you really value in the future.
Okay, we're going to jump into some of those options, but why might a student not want to go to college or defer college?
Well, I would say that you know, the primary reason I think is, well, there's two. Number one, college is not cheap anymore. The price of college years ago, 40, 50 years ago, was much lower relative to starting salaries or starting wages. I think it's gone up like 10 times the college costs relative to starting wages over the last 40 plus years.
Yeah.
So the cost of college has gone up by 10. You would hope that the actual starting salaries would go up by 10, but that's not the case. It's basically stayed relatively flat to that 10x increase in terms of starting salaries. So with that in mind, the cost is a huge consideration because in many cases, going to a college requires finding money that people don't have, or going into debt, or signing something that basically says you have to pay the debt back and you cannot discharge that debt in bankruptcy, unlike any other debt in the United States, really, where you can discharge it in bankruptcy. You cannot discharge education debt in bankruptcy. So that is a real hurdle for many people. Beyond that, the cost obviously is a huge thing to consider, but what about just, do you enjoy sitting in a traditional classroom, being lectured at, doing group projects like maybe you have done over the last 12 years of K through 12 schooling? And many students are built for something different. Physically, mentally, they're just not in the place where they want to do another 2 or 4 years of learning in that style. And they want to learn and experience the world in a way that allows them to absorb it in a different way. So, and it doesn't mean it's a wrong way, it's just different. But again, so much of our pop culture makes people feel guilty if they leave this path of schooling after grade 12. But in fact, some of the most exciting options, and those people who love to learn experientially, can really thrive by not going, or at least delaying, a 2 or 4 year degree and getting a job, starting a business, doing an apprenticeship, volunteering, getting an internship, you know, joining maybe the service. These are all options that are really worth considering, especially if you have that combination. If both of those situations describe you, where you both are concerned about the cost of education, but are also someone who's sort of tired of sitting in a classroom, you may want to take a break and as a result, not have to go into debt while you go take that break.
Thank you. Now, when I mention this topic to people, the first thing everybody says there are two things that come up. They either mention gap years or trade schools. So let's get those out the way. Tell us a little bit about gap years, the truth about gap years, and explain to us what a trade school is, because I don't think we all have the same definition of trade school. And then we're going to jump into the other alternatives.
Sure. So a gap year is a big catch-all. There are formalized, structured gap years, and there are informal gap years. A gap year could describe you sitting on your sofa for a year, which is a very informal gap year. Or you could be part of a structured program where you actually pay money to go on a trip or do service in an exotic part of the world or in a different part of the country. And those actually have a fee associated with them. So gap year is a spectrum in of itself. Most people, again, think of gap years. You know, gap years became popularized with the children of our former president, Barack Obama, when one of his students chose to do a gap year. But they've been around for years. And again, these are opportunities to sort of learn yourself as much as about the world around you in a way that's different from how you've experienced the world as a student in K through 12. And some students get an apprenticeship. Some students volunteer if they can afford it. Some people act as a waitress during their gap year as they're considering what they want to do after that year. So you can fill a gap year with really anything. So a gap year is very much of a catch-all. And again, there are some expensive gap year programs, and then there's ways in which you can spend a gap year where you're earning money. And then there's in between where you're not earning money, but you're able to live in your maybe family home. And so again, just take in the world in a different way. So gap years are very much a whole potpourri of things. And we could do a whole program just on gap years. Trade schools, and again, they're very positive for the students who need a time to step back, either for, you know, self-consideration of what do they really want to do in life, maybe they're tired physically or mentally of school and they just want to refresh. So it's great for a lot of different students. Trade schools are a wonderful opportunity for students who want to get really hands-on experiential pre-professional development in a sort of a school setting, but not in terms of traditionally just reading books, studying for tests. Usually trade schools are associated with things like becoming an electrician. That's an option. You can get an apprenticeship to become an electrician, or you can go to trade school to become an electrician. So there are classes that are sort of more structured to learn a particular trade. So some people actually even refer to community colleges, depending on the career, the actual major in the community college, as a trade school, because if you're going to a community college and you know you're going to be focusing on nursing, you know your goal at the end of that 2-year degree is to get a degree in nursing to give you a spectrum of opportunities in the nursing field. Not all nursing jobs are qualified by just having an AA, but if you know you're coming out of a particular school with a trade as an opportunity for you, that you would not have that trade had you not gone to that school, that is what I would throw into the trade school category, where you know you're going to come out being qualified for a career or job that you would not be qualified for had you not gone to that school.
I love your broader definition, because I think a lot of people think of trade schools as where you learn to have careers where you work with your hands. And you talked about nursing, it's expanded. So when you come out, if you know going in that you're going to come out prepared for a particular trade, no matter what the trade is. Peter has a question. Before I ask Peter's question, you mentioned the word apprenticeship a couple times. Can you define that for us? Is that just another word for internship, or is it something else?
So no, it's not. I mean, internships can be paid or unpaid. And people can do internships as early as, middle school, high school, especially unpaid ones. That's sort of a fancy name for free labor in many cases, an unpaid internship. And then there are paid internships. They can be in white collar or blue collar settings. An apprenticeship is not just, again, working with your hands necessarily. There are a lot of different apprenticeship programs out there, but the apprenticeship is more of a situation where it's a set time period. And you know that you're maybe going to be in an apprenticeship for 2 to 5 years. And during that time period, you're actually going to be earning money at a percentage of what someone who completes the apprenticeship would be earning. So like with a plumber, for instance, it would be a several-year apprenticeship. And starting out, you would maybe earn a certain percentage of what a master plumber would earn. And then with every passing year of your apprenticeship, you earn more. Same thing with electricians in many cases. And then at the end of the program, and when you complete it, that's the point at which you can become sort of a full-fledged plumber or full-fledged electrician. Then you're earning basically this standard salary of a full-time electrician or plumber. So it's where you slowly earn. And again, what's great about apprenticeships is you're not going into debt. And it's also, unlike an internship, something where you don't have to go long periods without getting any pay. In many cases, you start to get paid at least something right from the start in order to engage in a combination of both experiential learning, going on job sites, learning the actual way in which that job functions, but also sometimes apprenticeships also build into them a course time, where you actually go to a classroom and you are learning and you are studying. So it's a combination of sort of classroom learning and real world experience. And the best part is that you're being paid from the start in many cases for an apprenticeship.
Thank you for that. I'm going to put up Peter's question. He says, he asked, what is your opinion on getting an RESP, Registered Education Savings, for your child for post-secondary school?
Well, so every family is in a very different situation. It depends on what your current costs are. Relative to what what maybe your student's goals are eventually, or what your goals are for your student eventually. There are lots of different types of savings plans out there. And I would say that, a lot of people are so intimidated by the cost of college that they are cowed basically into starting to save in a plan, any number of these types of plans that exist. But then maybe their child grows up and they want to become a cook, or they want to become something that doesn't require any sort of degree. And so then you save money that maybe you could have used for your lifestyle, your family's lifestyle for years ahead. So I think that that's a question that you really have to weigh everything else going on in your life, your current expenses, how much you can sort of square away each month. And I would say personally, I work in the field of education. I have not yet started any sort of savings plan for my children because I want them not to feel as though, A, I don't, I have a lot of other expenses, but B, I want them to feel as though that getting a 4-year degree, even though I work in the field and I'm a part of that sort of industry, if you will, that there's a lot of options out there and that we're not going to prejudge what what my children will be after they graduate high school. I want them to feel as though the world is their oyster and that education does not have to go into a 13th year. So there's a philosophical reason behind that as well. But it can be a great way to save money in a vehicle that is advantageous to you for lots of different reasons. But again, you have to weigh how much money you have coming in, how much money you have coming out on a daily basis. And education is always evolving. And as we were mentioning on this call today, there's so many options that exist without you having to go to a 4-year or 2-year college that I think people have to sort of lower the temperature in their mind about how much money they're going to have to output for their kids into their 20s, because maybe, again, your child will be the type of child who doesn't need that type of experience or want that type of experience when he or she graduates high school.
So you may want to consider putting the money, if that's the route you want to go to, in the type of fund where they can use it for these other options, not solely for a college education.
Yes, absolutely. So again, there's a lot of options out there. I'm not a financial professional or an accountant, but what I will say is I think anything that limits you is not something I would recommend, whereas flexibility is really the key. As we go deeper into the 21st century, the world of work is changing, automation is increasing, jobs are going to increasingly change a great deal. And as a result, you want to hedge your bets and make sure that your money is usable and growing at the greatest rate, but for a flexible diversity of opportunities that could exist for your child and you come 5, 10, 15 years down the line.
Okay. So when we were pre-gaming this, we talked about a couple of things. You mentioned a couple of things: pathways to careers, career readiness, and skills-based hiring. What makes a young person career ready? What do they need to be able to do or know to demonstrate that they are career ready? And how can we as parents help them?
You know, what's so interesting is that this has gotten lost in so many of the conversations about students transitioning from high school to what comes next. There's a huge camp in this country that focuses on, oh, we're not teaching, enough math and science and STEM. There's another group that says that, we need to focus more on social issues in K through 12. But lost in all that are the skill sets that many generations before us took for granted: courtesy, following up, personalizing, your connections, networking, and a huge. I would put a lot of this under the banner of communication skills. In the last 15 years or so, definitely since the smartphones have come out, our teenagers have changed. It's really irrefutable. They've changed a lot. Their communication skills have become much different. Whether they're better or worse, that's a judgment call. But what I will say is that in the process, students have lost the ability to, in many cases, not all, but and they have not been encouraged to develop those sort of soft skills that many people who are doing the hiring are really interested in. So the power of the follow-up email or the follow-up call, the power of writing an email. Again, emails they haven't been around for generations, but even email today for today's teenagers is something that is hard sometimes for students to string multiple sentences together in a way that seem professional, earnest, and grammar, good syntax, etc. So they're so used to talking in little fits and starts on these social media platforms. So as a result, they're so used to doing emojis and other short terms of communication, thumbs up when you're communicating to your friend or your mom or your dad, that when it comes time to apply to that first job or that first internship or to be considered, there's a real disconnect between sort of their very colloquial, informal way of communicating with their network of teachers, parents, their friends, their family members, and then what even an employer who's looking to hire a high school graduate is looking for in terms of professionalism, timeliness, and in terms of communication skills. So The biggest complaint I've heard from employers who are looking to hire students right out of high school, or even high school students over the summer, is their concern with students not responding in a timely manner to phone or email communication, sometimes taking days to check their email. And then when they do actually check their email, many of these employers are reporting that they are getting from students emails that are far too conversational, as if they were friends and not in a relationship or a power dynamic between a potential employer and a potential employee. So very short emails, like I said, saying, sure, yeah, what's up? And not sincerely, and not giving your full name, and not attaching a resume, or sometimes attaching a resume after being requested one, but not saying anything else in the body of the email. So these little cues add up, and in the mind of a hiring manager or someone who's looking for an internship or a volunteer, or an intern or a volunteer over the summer, there's this expectation of communication skills, and then there's what our students are really prepared to do. And I've seen this for private school kids, public school kids, students around the country. They're not being emphasized, and there's not enough emphasis in their schools on how to come across professionally, seriously, and so as someone who would be an employee who would be able to maintain focus, timeliness, and organization skills as a starting employee.
So we as parents may need to practice those skills at home if they're not happening in school and other parts of the community. We should do probably what most of us have the experience with in our past. Is I remember having to do professional conversations, and we would role play in the classroom and stuff, and they don't do that anymore, so we have to do it at home.
Absolutely correct.
What is skills-based hiring? You mentioned that term.
Yeah, so skills-based hiring is a term that is being used increasingly. And this is where employers are looking for very specific skills and are not necessarily associating those skills with a college degree or high school diploma as much as some other proof of work or accomplishment in those skills. So that could be by taking a sort of an assessment in the hiring process, or it could be by showing them some sort of constellation of certificates of accomplishment in particular niche areas of tech or other fields. So that is what I would sort of define as that.
Okay, and what are the pathways for our students to demonstrate that, and how do they garner these skills to be able to demonstrate them to future employers?
Well, again, I'll say again to you, I'm saying again right now because I've had a conversation with this about a client last night, actually, about making the most of your time. While there's been more opportunities than ever for students to communicate, engage with people around the corner, around the world, increasingly that distracts us from doing any one thing well. And so many students are spread very thin, and there's sensory overload in their daily lives. And so they're not really making much progress during the school year or during the summer in accomplishing particular skills. So what I encourage students to do is use their summers in high school. And if you're a parent, to encourage your student to master 1 to 3 skill sets over each summer in high school. And that can be done through internships or jobs, customer service, that's a skill set. If you have a couple customer service internships or jobs or volunteer opportunities by the time you graduate high school, that particular theme will be loud and clear throughout your resume. Similarly, there's ways in which you can take online courses for free or for small amounts of money and earn certificates in particular niche areas. And so that's a new way that, again, didn't exist 15 years ago. With the advent of technology and broadband internet and 5G, and the way in which over the last just 2 years, so much more video learning online, more and more people can learn more in many ways from YouTube videos and open source videos than they can through having gone to the library over many years, because there's so much information at your disposal. But I would say MOOCs, massive online courses, so many opportunities exist for earning certificates through them. And then also internships, jobs, volunteer opportunities, that constellation of what you do over the summers, what you do with your free time during the school year really does have an output point, which is putting together a professional resume sometime in your senior year, so that you're not just going to put an extracurricular resume together for applying to college and university, if that's an option, but you're also going to put together a professional resume that condenses all the stuff that you've achieved in high school and outside of high school over your 4-year high school experience into a document that you can share with potential employers, apprenticeship programs, et cetera, so that you can be a more compelling applicant.
That's valuable information. Thank you. We are coming close to the end of our time together, so I want to remind people, if you have questions of Craig, please throw them in the comment section now so that you can do that, and he's happy to address them. And I also want to remind you that we have a book giveaway today. We're giving away 10 free copies of The Blue Collar Cash, Love Your Work, Secure Your Future, and Find Happiness for Life. In order to be considered for that giveaway, all you have to do is send your postal address, because it is a hard copy book. Send your postal address to KHARDING at YourTeenMag, YourTeenMag.com. I said it again, even though I promised I wouldn't. Send me an email, and the first 10 emails will receive the book. I am tempted to dive really deep into, what do we look for in a trade school or a program and stuff, but I want to make sure that we've thrown out as many options as we can. So are there any alternative paths to college that we haven't mentioned yet?
Well, I'm a huge fan of using the internet, harnessing the power of the World Wide Web to your advantage. One thing, I've knocked some teenagers a lot in this call in terms of maybe their communication skills, but I also want to praise the current generation of teenagers because they are so fluent in using technology. And so with that said, there's a passivity that I've seen in the current generation of teenagers that's disturbing, because if they weren't so passive, they would realize how much they can harness the power of the web. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about monetizing your hobbies, monetizing your interest, using the World Wide Web as a way to do so. So if you have a passion for something, anything, and you want to write about it and you have a lot to say about it, you can start a YouTube channel, you can start a blog, you can put ads on that blog. If you have enough followers, can start monetizing your YouTube channel. You may not become a viral hit, but there's a lot of money to be made online through your own website and or through just creating an account with pre-existing social media firms such as again YouTube. So I would say that people who have passions or interests, be confident if you're a teenager that you have something to say about it, and that you can share your knowledge, your perspective, your interest with the world. That's a way in which to at least start earning some side money. So that if you do end up getting a 4-year job, or you do end up, go to a 4-year school, or you do get a full-time job, you can still see that there is potential in earning money on the side, which is increasingly important as people do gigs in this gig economy to make ends meet, or for just extra cash. So many people still, or many parents still say, well, you know what, if you're going to start a business, they think brick and mortar business or a physical good business. But there are so many opportunities to make money just through your knowledge, your passion, and your interest online. And I really encourage students to harness their knowledge of technology and combine it with the ways in which you can monetize that online as a way to at least do a side gig, if not jump headfirst into making money online.
Great. Thank you. We have a question from Mark, and I may need your help with this, Mark, so I hope you're still with us. Mark says, where can we find outlooks for blue-collar jobs for near future in our area? I'm not sure where your area is, Mark.
Well, and again, this obviously is dependent on what part of the country you are in. But what I would say is, anywhere from contacting the Chamber of Commerce to local unions, trade unions, it's good to do both to learn about what opportunities may exist in your local area. If they're building a new hotel, that could be a 2-year project. And there could be a lot of demand for electricians, builders, bricklayers, et cetera. If you live where I live, which is in the Mid-Atlantic region, there's a lot more government-based jobs. So I would say that with the recent bills being passed in terms of stimulus to reboot the economy, there's new investments in green energy, both blue and white collar fields in green energy. So I would say that ask around, go to your local employment office, ask your high school counselor if you are still in high school about alternatives, or other people who may be visiting the school who are looking to hire students. Harness those resources that are available to you. If you're recently graduated from high school, or you have a student who's recently done so, you can always go back to your school and ask them about different employers or people who have dropped by to inquire about hiring recent high school graduates. So again, going to local trade unions, going to your local chamber of commerce, going on your local job boards, Indeed, Monster. There's so many different ones out there, and each of them have a niche. LinkedIn, LinkedIn has more white collar jobs, Monster has more blue collar jobs, and they're, again, using the word spectrum a lot today, but there's a full spectrum of job sites. And if you put a particular mile radius from where you live in, as you put your zip code in, you will see the diversity of jobs, or the lack thereof, that may exist in your local area. And that can start informing your decision about should you pick up and leave, or are there particular types of jobs in your area that fit your skill set?
That's a comprehensive answer to the question. No matter where you live, Mark happens to live in Chicago, but I believe these resources are really good. We're gonna one more comment from Mark to follow up. I'm thinking of in terms of choosing a career based on needed skills for future jobs, i.e. HVAC, electrician, etc. Thank you. You're welcome, Mark.
Well, you know what is old is new again. And what I will say is, as much as there is talk about automation, and that is true, there are some trades that stand the test of time. And so what I would absolutely say, HVAC, plumbing, electrician, these are ones that stand the test of time. And as we've seen, unfortunately, recently in the last 2 years, nursing, is one I would also put out there. Medical testing technicians is something that, even these big machines that can do wonders that weren't possible 10, 15 years ago, someone needs to operate them. And so many of these are blue collar jobs, or jobs that don't require a 2 or 4 year degree in order to start. So I would look into all of those, because it's not just plumbing and electricians, which are obviously physically intensive. You're getting down on the ground, but there's a lot of other jobs that some of us would maybe more closely associate with white collar jobs that also don't require that 4 year degree, that still are percolating up in lots of part of our country.
Wonderful. There is a lot of information packed in these past 30 minutes. This is a great conversation. If you joined us midway or something, feel free to replay it, and please go through the comment section where we have other resources and links. We have another question. We're going to take this question because we like people to be heard. Jamie says, is there a recourse for determining a career path for a high school student who is undecided?
So, every high school is different in terms of their career counseling provision. Some are stronger than others, but what I would say is, if you feel like you're not getting the support and guidance you need from a high school guidance office, what I often recommend students do for both educational and entertaining purposes is go into Google and look for something known as a Holland Code personality mosaic. It's usually anywhere from 80 to 90 quick questions that students can answer yes or no to, that assesses their personality in 6 different lettered categories. And you can administer it to yourself. But let's say you have completely no idea, you have a lot of interest maybe, or you have no interest that you know of. Starting with something like a personality mosaic or a personality synthesizer or inventory that you can administer to yourself is the easiest first step, because you don't need to be qualified to administer it to yourself. And then after you answer those 90 questions or so, you can score yourself. And let's say your lettered categories are E, S, and I. That means you're enterprising, social, and investigative. There are career clusters and college major clusters that associate with every lettered combination. And so again, if you feel completely out to pasture at your high school, and as if there's no one you can talk to, or they don't have time for you, or they're not the best career counselors over there, then again, look up Holland Code Personality Mosaic or Holland Code Personality Assessment. There are a lot of them online that you can administer to yourself, and that's a good first step. Beyond that, again, use the power of the World Wide Web. Go to different video sharing sites. Type in different careers or how you got started or how to start a particular business. And the more you learn, the more you research, the more you do your due diligence, the more likely you will go down the path that is aligned with your true value system and will be the right fit for you.
Can you spell the Holland one so we can put it up in the comment
section?
Sure,
Holland Code. So it's like the country Holland, otherwise known as the Netherlands. And then the word code, C-O-D-E. And again, sometimes they call it a personality mosaic or a personality assessment, but Holland Code, 2 separate words. And again, that's a really good starting place. Many schools will have career and college counseling relationship management systems, sort of online portals. And sometimes that assessment is built right into it electronically, but you can also go online and print one out or take one online and again, start your journey to learn more about careers, what's out there and what aligns with your personality type, which really doesn't change over time. You may have new interests, but you have only one personality usually. So again, going to a personality assessment like that, I think is a good first start.
Okay. I'm going to put this up. Anna says she just Googled it and she put the URL in the comment section. So if you're looking for it there, she beat us to it. Thank you, Anna. That's very helpful. And Jamie says, perfect. Thanks for the answer to your question.
Don't be afraid. I will say this. Don't be afraid, even if you don't understand how your counseling office or guidance office works at school. As long as you remain a high school student, don't be shy about going physically into that office and asking for help. I always say the squeaky wheel gets the oil, and repetition is really important to meeting the success. So, and I also say knowledge is power. But sometimes the biggest hindrance or hurdle students find themselves facing is being shy or being, having never gone in that office before and being intimidated by it. But as long as you remain in school, take advantage of those resources, ask questions. There's no stupid question. And hopefully there will be someone within your school setting who can set you on the right path or point you to a resource that will be valuable to you. And again, all public schools, all private schools are built differently, but usually there's someone on campus who can answer questions related to college and careers. And if they can, again, the World Wide Web is an amazing resource that people 30, 40 years ago just did not have. So thank goodness you have that.
And if your child does seem reticent, practice with them. It doesn't have to be a full-on role play, but say, go in and make sure you ask this, that, and the other, and practice with them. That'll make them a little more comfortable.
That's so true, because in the world of COVID, people have become less and less confident in being the first person to interact socially in the real world. We're so used to just logging onto platforms like this and then logging off that actually taking the first step, putting out your hand, saying, "Hi, my name's Craig. Can you help me?" That's a lost art in and of itself. So yeah, practice at home.
Thank you. There is so much information packed in here. Thank you. I appreciate this. This is very helpful and valuable. If there is one thing that people remember from this half hour, what is the one thing that they should take away if they don't remember everything?
Well, I want to circle back to something you said in the beginning of the call, which is despite 40 years of popular culture encouraging Americans to, and people really around the world, but particularly Americans, to focus on getting a 4-year degree. Still, only about 60% of high school graduates pursue any sort of further 2-year or 4-year degree, and only about low 40% do a 4-year degree, whereas another 20% do a 2-year degree. So you are not alone if you have questions about, is pursuing a 2 or 4-year degree a good option for me? And don't feel bad about yourself because you don't want to, you don't have interest in, or you're not intrigued by going to more years of school. There are many opportunities that exist out there. And again, there may not be a office at your school called the Apprenticeship office, and it's instead called the College Counseling office. And so you may feel like, well, how do I find apprenticeships? But with a little bit of digging online or asking questions at school, you will find the diversity of opportunities and then some that we talked about today that exist out there. And again, plenty of Americans, a very healthy plurality of Americans are pursuing pathways beyond going to a 4-year college or university. So I think that it's really important that we mainstream it and that we don't look down our nose at it, and that we celebrate students who know that they want to do something other than a 2-year or 4-year degree after high school, and we try to support them as much as we can. And if we have a seat at the table at our local school boards or in our local school systems or at our local schools, do everything you can as parents to, again, mainstream this idea that 4-year and 2-year schools are great for those who they are great for, but there are many of us and many people in our neighbors or family members who would thrive more or succeed and go further by doing something else, gap years, jobs, starting a business, and so forth, right out of high school.
Thank you. And for those of you who have either more than one student and you have one who is considering 2 or 4 year college, or if your student is undecided and that's why you're here because you want to know the options, or 2 or 4 year college is still on the table, but there are other options. We are in the midst of our Destination College series, our 8 weeks summit series. We are on week 2, starts tonight at 7 p.m. If you are not registered for that, you should register. It is a bargain, full price. It's $57 for 8 weeks of experts to take you through the college admissions process. All registrants are eligible for our grand raffle, and the grand raffle is a free SAT or ACT course from Sylvan Learning. That is a $1,200 grand raffle prize. So if that is an area that your student is considering, please register and join us tonight and over the course of the next 7 weeks. The registration link is in the comment section. Mark, thank you so much for joining us. I want to remind our audience that tomorrow, same time, 10:30 a.m. on Wednesday, we have Coffee with Jen and Sharon. Jen and Sharon are parents. They pick a topic of the day and they dish it with each other. Sometimes they bring along a friend. Join them, bring your own coffee or tea, and find out what the scoop is for this week. Thank you, Craig. This was very valuable. I really appreciate it. There's information here that I didn't know. I'm hoping that there's information that helps some of the other parents out there. We got lots of comments and people are thanking you for your contribution.
Thank you for having me. And again, as you were saying, keep your options open. I think that we need to encourage our students, our teenagers, to explore as many opportunities as exist as possible when they're still at home with us, so that they feel that they can do so in a safe place, in a supportive environment, and realize that there is not just one path, or there are not even 5 paths. There are myriad paths that exist. And, the only thing keeping us from learning about them is ourselves and the time we take to expose ourselves or our children to those paths. So this is part and parcel of that. But like you said, the opportunities that you are offering tonight for college admissions, all of these are great ways to learn more about what may be the right path for you or your teen.
That's a perfect way to end today. Thank you. Goodbye, everybody.